What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Have some fun stuff to talk about today. Make sure you enter the competition for the new 3DS XL Samus Edition because that is actually coming up pretty quick at 60,000 subscribers now. But we have some fun stuff to talk about today. A lot of numbers, really funny mode in a wrestling game coming up. So let's get started. So Nintendo stock has been the interest of a lot of people recently. It's done nothing but go up for the most part since the Switch was announced in a trailer last year. It really has. It's been kind of on an upward trend for a bit now. And yesterday, it actually hit a pretty big milestone, something they haven't seen in about 9 years since the Wii was kind of at its peak. And that is that their market capitalization has now hit 6 trillion yen. And again, that's the last time they were at that mark was when the Wii was flying off store shelves. So Nintendo's market capitalization has really been past Sony's for a little while now, really. It took place in June, I believe, where they passed them, and they've done nothing but gain on them since then. Market capitalization is when you take outstanding shares that companies or investors, let's just say, investors own, and then you multiply it by the value of a share. And that gives you an idea of what their worth is in the stock exchange or in the market. And the reason they do that is because companies will split shares. So one company could have a ton of shares, like say Microsoft, they have a ton of shares, but their stock value isn't as high because they keep splitting them. And you may have a company that has a really high share value, but they don't have as many. So we multiply them together to give us really a solid number that we can get from any one company. And in this case, if you take Sony shares and multiply it by the value, or Nintendo shares multiplied by the value, Nintendo will yield a bigger number at this time. And there's really a big reason, I've touched on it a lot. It seems that so many investors believe at this point that they are going to enter China. It seems like all of the signs point to this. I've even had people sending me stuff on Twitter, pictures of advertisements going up in China. So I'm not sure when it's happening. I want to say it's probably like mid next year, maybe March or so. We'll see it pop up there in China. And here's the thing. If they don't really pop up in China at that time or even a little before then, you're going to have some people get disappointed. So I wouldn't recommend buying Nintendo stock at this time. I'm not at all good with stocks to the point where I'll give you advice. I just don't think it's a good time to buy right now because I think the stock's getting higher. I think it's overvalued right now, mostly based on the momentum from the Switch. I could be wrong. When they enter China, it could explode further. But I think it's pretty high now, and it's probably not a good time to buy. Now, if you bought like early last year, you're probably in good shape right now. Now, at this point, a lot of industry analysts are wondering if Nintendo can keep up this demand, really keep up this momentum going into the holiday season with the amount of demand they're going to face. I mean, consider Switches now. If you see them in stores now, you might want to buy one, like I said, because it's going to sell out. And then if they are also spread to China, they're going to have a massive amount of Switches coming out every month. And it's going to come down to, can they get the supply? Because we heard about the flash chip storage. None of us know if that's been worked out yet. I like to think that they at least have a plan to work that out if they're thinking about entering a very large market with China. And really at this point, it's up to Nintendo to provide the stocks people will buy. Now, I really don't think you can just take their worth in the stock market as being Nintendo is doing better than Sony in this case. I do think Nintendo has the hottest product right now with the Switch, but Sony is really spread with some real duds in their company with things like TVs. I don't think TVs make them that much money, to be completely honest. Obviously, the biggest things that they have right now is their insurance company in Japan, and of course, the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation brand is great for them, and so is that insurance agency. Everything else is kind of either break even or at loss most times. So I don't think Sony will ever shed those different parts of their business because it helps them kind of engulf. Like, for example, you get a TV, you get a PlayStation, a box to play like ultra high def Blu-rays because the PS4 doesn't. But they want to make sure they have your entire living room on lockdown. So they probably won't get rid of TVs or anything. Just know that obviously the PlayStation and insurance is what's really propping them up at this time since they got rid of their laptops and their cell phones weren't doing anything. Those are mainly their two big money makers. Also, real quick, let's talk about the Switch in France because we keep hearing different numbers out of France for the Switch. We heard like 250,000 units around launch time and everything. Well, now that amount has climbed to almost 400,000 units in roughly 6 or 7 months or so, depending on where their cutoff is. But this is pretty impressive considering the Wii U sold 742,000 or so their lifetime in France. And that's a market that never really latched on heavily, but it looks like they're going to easily clear 1 million Switch units by probably the end of year 2. And that is much, much better than what they did with the Wii U. So it's very interesting to see how the Switch is grabbing different markets that the Wii U just could not, and it shows just how different the Nintendo's marketing is. The appeal of the system, the portability of the system is probably helping. The games that are showing up now, as opposed to being so spread out in the Wii U's lifetime when people just stopped caring. Obviously, Nintendo is picking up regions that they have not previously, but it will be interesting to see how France kind of picks up the Switch as we go forward, because the big hitter like Mario Odyssey isn't even out yet, and that's going to be a game that's going to sell for a while. Next up, I wanted to show you guys something kind of funny. Now, WWE 2K18 is coming up, obviously, in about a week. It'll be out. And they did some pretty funny things to the game. Some things I actually like, because it shows some creativity here. They actually added some filters, and not just any filters. For example, here's 8-bit mode. That's right. You can play the game as it was meant to be played on what I assume is a Sega CD. It says 8-bit mode, but it looks more like a Sega CD FMV to me. I think this is really funny, though. You're not probably going to play this a lot. You'll just do it occasionally. When you're bored and you just want to flip that on. I don't think you'll play it most times. It also has late 90s filter, 1990s filter, 1980s filter, black and white, sepia, and I love this, bad VHS. That's perfect. Bad VHS filter. I assume where you have like the lines going across from like the skipping part, or it's not reading parts of the tape correctly, and you have those static lines. What a cool idea. Now again, you're not going to use it much, but the fact that it's there to get turned on for laughs now and then, maybe you have some buddies over, or maybe you go online and you can set filter to random when you're playing against people in match-made games. That would be really funny if you start up and, oh, it's 8-bit mode, I gotta beat this person while it looks really bad. Looks like a Sega CD FMV. Kind of a funny idea. It's very creative, and I like the idea a lot. And in our last bit of news, I wanted to touch on this before, but the story was ever developing. Things were happening all over the place. People were going crazy. And that is, of course, the Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce situation. If you didn't know, it was kind of a funny gag in the show. Show is an extremely die-hard fan base, that is Rick and Morty, and McDonald's decided, hey, let's do this where we have Szechuan sauce as a packet you can pick up at stores. Great promotion for us. People will show up to get it. Maybe they'll buy something. And yeah, that's a great idea. Except there's one problem. They didn't provide much of any of these packets. In fact, some stores didn't get any. Like, some got like 10. And you might be thinking, well, who's really going to go out and do this anyway? It's a gag on a cartoon, Szechuan sauce. The fan base for Rick and Morty is tremendously loyal. Like, seriously, they are super into this show. Over 1,000 people showed up to some McDonald's to camp out to get a packet of sauce. I'm not kidding. It really was like that. And when the different McDonald's did not have the sauce, they started freaking out and chanting things like, we want sauce and all that stuff. It was all over the internet. Well, now it's getting more out of control, despite McDonald's saying, hey, we hear you, we're going to bring in tons of this stuff. People are making absolute killings off of this sauce on places like eBay right now. We've seen it. The sauce has gone for upwards of $1,000. I'm not kidding. $1,000 on eBay. And now it's to the point, I couldn't believe this. This is the only reason I'm included. I could not believe this is actually a thing. They're now to a point where people are taking a picture of the sauce, they are framing it, and they're selling it on eBay for $10, and they have sold several of these things. I checked one, and it was like 21 of these had sold, and it had like 300-something people had viewed this in like the past hour. Absolutely insane what's happening. Listen, don't buy a framed picture of the sauce. Come on, you can just probably look it up and print it out yourself. What are you doing? I guess because they have the sauce, you think it's more authentic. Also, keep in mind, McDonald's said they're going to include more, so we'll see more later on this year. Don't go out and buy these sauces for $1,000. Don't buy framed pictures for $10. They're going to really, I want to say, saturate the market with these things, and those sauce packets will drop in value heavily. But I will say this to McDonald's or any other company that wants to play around with this kind of stuff, don't underestimate the fan base for some of these shows. You may think it's a cartoon. I'm sure the executives looked at it and like, it's a cartoon. Who's going to show up? And then 1,000 people camp out. Don't underestimate some of these fan bases because they are diehard. Some of these fan bases are, and they learn the hard way. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me think about this stuff we talked about today, whether it is the Nintendo Switch market capitalization, growing. There's so much stuff's happening for Nintendo that really is massively interesting from an investor standpoint since, well, it keeps growing. And then they haven't even entered China. Sure, people are anticipating it, but if it doesn't happen, it's gonna be pretty bad for the stock. But if it does happen, it has nowhere to go but up, and it could be interesting. Also, let me know what you think about the Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce situation with McDonald's. Were you one of the people camping out to get it, or were you kind of on the outside looking in, trying to figure out what's going on here? Why are all these people camped outside of my McDonald's, and why are people buying sauce packets for over $1,000 at times on eBay? It makes no sense to me. Let me know your thoughts on that, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.